Hello everybody. Is this the good mic distance? What's this? This is good. Okay, did everyone have a nice conference? Okay, right. Well, don't get too excited because it's over and I'm here. I'm really glad during that little Q&A you all wanted outsiders because that's partially what I'm talking about. And very quickly, these slides were made on a netbook in about 7 minutes and only partially by me. So don't expect too much, don't expect anything, don't even look at it. Your life will be better. As Eric said, my name's Quintin Smith. I was a video game journalist for about 10 years. And recently I took Google slideshow, no, there you go. Okay, so this is my website. This is Shut Up and Sit Down. That person in the blue shirt is his fault. It's called what it is as opposed to something sensible. What's I think interesting about that is that I'm kind of the first video game journalist to abandon video games entirely to look at a more narrow band of them. But I don't think I'm going to be the last. I think in the next few years we're going to see a lot more video game designers, writers rather, specializing in the near future. A lot of my friends are realizing that they can make more money just covering esports or indie games or mobile games. And I think we're going to see the quality of games writing improve as a result of that. Which is good for almost everyone. One person who does lose out on this is my mother, who plaintively reminds me once a year that I should invent the next Mario. Now I'm in board games, that probably won't happen. About that. And just very quickly then onto practice. Let me very quickly say I have immense respect for practice. It's very rare that there's a gaming event that kind of recharges your batteries. As a video game writer, I think we can all agree that Frank and Eric do an incredible job curating this discussion, getting these speakers together, and they even found the time to throw a dance battle. So I think we'd like to give them a round of applause now, along with everyone else behind the scenes. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is even better than last year, which is a thing. Now I've appeased them, I'm going to do my best to embarrass them. Because this is a secret. This is something that was sent out to the speakers of the conference, talking about the high-level talks that we were meant to do. This is a quote from that email. We always pictured practice as something like the place where particle physicists come to talk shop. And I thought that, and that got me thinking about famous gatherings of particle physicists. I'm glad some of you can see where this is going. The sharpest, most ambitious creators working in our field today brought together for a single purpose. So maybe that isn't the best image. Then again, maybe this isn't entirely misplaced. Bear with me. Would you not agree that if rather than just exchanging ideas, if the creators in this room were to work together, we might be able to create gaming's atom bomb, all right? A construct of such ferocious imagination as to demolish the preconceptions that build even now at gaming's periphery. A game that will at once leave behind us its creators, but only to take a position as a lodestar in our sky. A game that with a lot of work and a bit of luck might be worthy of Mr. Zimmerman's ludic century. We live in hope. But which of our storied guests should lead that project, do you think? So this is my summary of the conference, and heckling is very welcome because I think this runs just under 15 minutes. I want to play a game with you now, and every one of you is going to need a phone or a laptop or something to write things down on, and you're going to create a game with a minimum of creativity, I stress. So initially, let's get the basics down first. All of you, every single person here, should decide what format this game will take, okay? So should it be a video game? A couple of years ago, I feel like this was kind of a foregone conclusion. And yet, as we're seeing just this year from Practice's speakers, board games, card games, it's all enjoying a resurgence right now. There is still such power in a physical medium, especially when players to date, I believe, are still the most complex and powerful tool available to any game designer. And with board games, they're right there. And they're your friends, and you can be a dick to them. But that's not even the decision now. Of course, anyone who was here this morning witnessed a breathtaking, as far as I'm concerned, talk on Nordic LARP. Perhaps our game should be a live-action game. This morning we learned about such advanced concepts as playing to lose for the sake of creating a dramatic scene, exploring participatory culture rather than something made by one author, or perhaps you'll interpret this category as making a sport. So those are your choices. All of you should quickly and relatively arbitrarily decide which of these three things you're going to make, or a hybrid perhaps, because that's exciting, isn't it? And once you've all got that, if you're in your head or not, I want you to pick a couple of names from this list. This is I hope all of the speakers except me. I can't remember who got the honor of Comic Sans, but that happened. Now, ideally, I want you to pick a couple of creators that don't necessarily work or don't both work in the medium that you chose. Okay? So if you're going for a board game, maybe you want to get a video game designer in there. If you want, say, Cecilia and Martin from Nordic LARP, have them working with someone from another field. If you can't remember someone's idea, perhaps just go with maybe the lesson that they were teaching, perhaps. Just get the concepts down. So my original idea when I was coming up with this talk is I was thinking this would be like a multiple choice thing. I'd give you like 3 people, and then which of these people are going to work with 3 other people, and then I'd tell you what monstrosity of a game that you've made. And the joke was going to be that Edge gives all of these games 7 out of 10. But then I thought, no, because there's something we can do that's more fun than that. I've been playing a lot of independently created pen and paper role-playing games recently. Yeah, they're a hell of a thing, right? And just one of the invaluable lessons I've learned specifically from these 2 games is there is a tremendous power in keeping a story and keeping a game feral. Okay, that's a term that was coined by Apocalypse World. That's there on the left. It's a game. It's a post-apocalyptic role-playing game, and you're going to assume that's perhaps boring. Then you read Apocalypse World's book, and you realize just how limited the creativity of people who work within the palette of Apocalypse is. And then Monster Hearts is kind of a sort of spiritual successor, using many of the same rules, where you play teenage monsters. But not necessarily Buffy and Twilight. It gets very, very dark very quickly. And what these games teach about keeping a game feral, and I will get back to my original thread, I guarantee, is that a game is very small when it's in the head of one author. You may disagree with this or not. But in these games, the moderator's job is just to make the lives of the players interesting. Okay, that's it. You don't give them an adventure, you just make their lives interesting, which is really easy because all the character classes in both of these games give everyone a sex power, which is only activated when you have sex. And this isn't like you have sex and you can knock down a wall or something. It's like the ghost. If you play a ghost in Monster Hearts, which I should stress are all the different monsters are different allegories of being a teenager. So the ghost is someone no one notices. I'm sure some people in the audience can sympathize with that. If the ghost has sex with your character, they can ask you a question. That's it. But you have to tell the truth, and only the ghost will know the answer to that. Are you gay, for example? I mean, these are queer, heavy queer influence in these games. So perhaps that would be a terrible question to ask. No, much better to keep, as Frank Lance said when we opened the conference, to keep games as a conversation. And let's keep this conversation we've got going alive. Let's make one another's lives interesting. Let's keep this story feral. So I want you, very, very quickly now, to look at the creators you've written down, to look at the format that you've got down in front of you. Look at the mess you've made, and just guess at what you've got in front of you, because I guarantee you're going to have, either you'll have a really hard time doing it, or you will come up with something unlike anything any of us have ever played, all right? I scribbled down some stuff just before this talk. Perhaps if Robert Yang and Emily Short work together, we might actually have that game of the sort of nude men on water towers yelling between each other. I don't know what that, but wouldn't it be great to find out what that game was like? You know, you said it, that was killed, dead in the water. What if Rob Davio made a board game with Telltale's Sean Vanneman and Jake Rodkin, a game of agonizing choices that change the board entirely, where players have the opportunity to make friends with racists and then name those racists. or open compartments containing additional racists. Or change their face with a sticker. The game that would result if Warren Spector made a video game with our conference's B-girl, Susanna Liu. By the way, anyone who didn't choose the breaking influence for their game, I have no idea what's wrong with you. The outsider influence, I think we've all agreed, that was an unbelievable talk. There's so much that was excellent in that. Just the concept of of a game where you can incorporate your opponent's plays into your own strategy to redouble them, where you can call out the judges. That was amazing. So if Warren Spector made a video game that fulfills our moral obligation for video games to be defined by their systems and fulfills our soul's obligation to dance. Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm being silly, at least partially here, and I'm sure the combinations you guys have made are all probably quite silly as well. No, we probably haven't made gaming's atom bomb. All right, so we failed there. Probably. But in a field that values innovation as much as we do, I think what we've just done here in this room is comparatively effortlessly create maybe 50 or 100 blueprints for games that are unlike anything any one of us has ever played. The Game Center's always been pretty ahead of the curve when it comes to observing the idea that game design transcends simply video games. I think we're all with that now. It's as it should be. The work we're doing here is about creating and innovating on the art of play, and that mandate comes before working with technology. It involves defining what amount of technology you want to work with. And any medium that only learns from itself will struggle to grow. So that's why this year I was so happy to see practice more diverse than ever, with dance, with LARP, with a greater board game presence. And this stuff isn't important in and of itself, but because of the cross-pollination that promises. Video games have so monopolized our attention for decades. I'm not saying we shouldn't make them anymore, but let's open them up and think about game design in a more holistic sense, leaving no aspect of play untouched. Now, I could tell you all the wonderful things that are about to happen, but I think you all already know the consequences of this cross-pollination. The games that aren't video games or board games but exist in between. Within my field of board gaming, I can't actually name, half dozen board game designers that are all currently working with mobile phones and trying to blend. Soren Johnson this weekend said board games are defined by an entirely open information, open systems. Video games have a clandestine system thing going on. If we can combine that, which is what these guys are doing, where you can hold your own simulation, your own world, and then play that into an that's fascinating. I was talking to Rob Dubbin the other week about how a bunch of people from NYU went to a performance by Punch Drunk. This is an interactive theater company where the play kind of happens in a large space around you. All of the people who visit, if you went, you would wear a mask and you're free to follow actors around. Punch Drunk is fascinating to NYU. I heard Eric talking about it just today. Because you go there and you go, well, these guys need game designers. That's what they need. Rob Dubbin's story in particular was he's in this magical space and he sees a door and he goes to the door and he opens the door and gets yelled at by a janitor because he wasn't supposed to be there. I went to London's performance, Punch Drunk's London-based performance of Faust. And that was interesting because I showed up, didn't quite know how to play per se, and spent about 15 minutes watching an actress sleep because she was between scenes. And I still feel really dirty. Because there's no pathing. I didn't know that. But I would suggest that Eric is perhaps doing this backwards when he talks about Punch Drunk needing game design. I think, let's not talk about what Punch Drunk should be doing. Let's learn from them and then make our own games and then charge $100 for a ticket ourselves. Let's take these guys' jobs, right? This is another event I went to just the other week. This is the Betrayer's Banquet. And this is an event that's fantastic, fascinating rather. It's an inordinately expensive 5-course meal with amazing food at one end of the table and terrible food at the other end. And I wrote about this and my experience. Oh, sorry, I should clarify. You're sat opposite someone, and then about every 45 minutes, you get to play the prisoner's dilemma with them. See where this is going. If you both reveal goblet tokens, you both move up 5 spaces. If one of you reveals a knife, that knife goes up 10 spaces, and the other person goes down 10 spaces. If both of you reveal knives, you both go down 5 spaces. And it was bollocks. It didn't function. You didn't get enough food. You couldn't play the game efficiently enough. The prisoner's dilemma did not work in this circumstance. And yet, the article I wrote about this, I was aware of it going around NYU because, and not just because I betrayed the UK Agricola champion on my first turn, who totally thought he'd solved it, and he didn't consider the metagame, which is, I don't want to sit next to you for 45 minutes. And it didn't do the rounds at NYU because of my surprise conclusion, where I found out, because obviously I sucked, I got to the bottom of the table, that I could trade my plate of Spam with people up at the top of the table who didn't want to eat their salad, and played a sort of Trading in the Mediterranean board game with the evening. No, it did the rounds at NYU because it's a fascinating combination of game design, of event design, a case study crying out to be considered and incorporated into our growing concept of what game design is. Incidentally, another reason this sucked is because Jimmy Wales was there, and no one's going to betray him, right? So he was just sat at the top of the table and just eating he was doing this. It was no. So yeah, on the subject of all of this cross-pollination, idly, and this is probably a terrible idea, but I'm wondering what this conference would look like if rather than the strategy game panel yesterday, for example, all these panels with similar schools of thought, what if we forced people from different schools to talk to each other? What if we blur these schools of thought? Because that's the first step in how we'll make our atom bomb, I suspect. When we've got video game designers ripping off the 1,001 ideas that are there to be ripped off in board gaming, trust me, if you want to just make your job so much easier as a video game designer, play some board games, steal everything you see. And how we'll get video games lessons applied to event design and theater, how we'll get our live action games taking place on abstracted boards that span cities. That's how we'll get our ludic century, I suspect. These as yet non-existent games that all of you, well, hope some of you have in front of you, the combinations of disparate schools of design, while we would all agree, I think we would all disagree, albeit a loss, as to what form those creators working together would ultimately take, I also cannot think of games that need to exist more than the games we cannot conceive of yet. That's my talk, everybody. Thank you all very much. Oh, and I hope to see you all next year.